This is literally fill the oil and check the gas is how bad it is. It's probably one of the worst. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the Infamous Project. We're back here in Canada after a long 2-week quarantine when I got back, just because, well, Canada can't seem to get itself together when it comes to all the COVID stuff. But you're gonna see a familiar looking car behind me here, and I got a real bad story about this one that I'm about to share with you guys. So if you haven't already seen the license plate here, Foxbody, aka Project Tax Return, is back at the shop, and this is a story that you guys might want to grab a drink for, sit down, relax, because, well, it's an interesting one. All right, so let's get into the story on this car. Now, I'm a man of transparency. I believe that being as open and honest about everything as possible is the only way, because if you try and hide stuff or you try and fool people, it's just going to come back to bite you in the ass later. So what happened with this car, you saw the video, got delivered, new owners picked it up, and I kid you not, because that was 2 days before I was leaving for Texas. And they drove the car home. A few little initial hiccups with the starter. Was a new starter in there and faulty to start with here and there, so no problem. Starter's honestly not a big deal. It's the joys of aftermarket parts these days. But he got it home, and he sent me an email. He's like, man, this car burnt like a liter of oil, a quart liter, just to get it on its 1.5-hour drive home. And I'm like, there's no way. You know, we drove the car around, took it to the alignment shop, everything was running, driving good. Didn't thrash on the car, because, you know, you don't want to thrash on customers' vehicles. But I'm like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, man. It looks like a diesel with a bad injector. So what to do, right? I'm about to head out, and he was super cool. He's just like, listen, man, I'm happy you called me back, because, you know, sometimes when you buy stuff, people don't call you back when they see their problems are taillights down the road. So he's like, thanks for calling me back. He's like, just make it right when you get back, and no worries. So I'm not gonna lie, this has been like a dark shadow over my shoulder. Every single day I thought about the absolute horrible situation that this car is in, because not only is this the second motor that's in the car, you know, I delivered a product that, you know, failed initially. So it's never a good feeling, right? Does the car run? Yes, it runs. Does it drive? It drives. But you definitely don't want to be into too many RPMs with it. And I'm going to show you guys. So the one part of this story that's really interesting that I'm going to get into is, I usually don't get into talking down on other shops or other individuals or anything like that, and I don't intend to disclose or go fully into details with what happened here, nor did I do it with the buyer, because there's a story with the motor that I got in this car, and I didn't want to make any of that his issues, because he's dealing with me, so I'm the one that's responsible. He might be watching this video now, so he might get a little bit of insight into exactly what is or how it was that I got this motor, and some of the stories behind it. So as you know, the first motor that I put in here, it was making some rattling noise in the valve train, which later found out looks like there was some detonation that happened in cylinder number 2, and yeah, gonna have to get that head sent off and get fixed up, and probably take a closer look at the piston. So that motor was out, and I was on the hunt for another motor to put in this car. So I reached out to someone here in Ontario, Canada, deals with a lot of Foxbody stuff. Not the same guy that got the parts car for the 4 to 8 project. Not that guy, different guy. Fairly organized, lots of stuff at his shop. and I said, listen, I'm in a bind. I want a fully running, good, decent long block that I don't have to worry anything about. So he says, no problem. I got this motor, came out of my friend's car, told me the price. The price was a little high. I'm not going to lie, but the reality is when you need something, sometimes you got to pay a little extra, and that convenience fee, which is really important, right? So the motor was rebuilt at some point. He couldn't tell me when, but you could tell there's full ARP hardware, head studs, all that stuff. Had a different set of Edelbrock intakes, which was no big deal because I was going to swap over the Performer RPM stuff that was on the first motor, and has a cam, and everything's supposed to be, you know, good to go. It was clean, no leaks, so great. So going through the motor, as I was getting it ready to put in the car, obviously I cleaned it up and painted it because it was this ugly, way too much blue and like the fake aluminum paint everywhere. So that wasn't too appealing to the eye. So I got all that cleaned up. I did put a brand new oil pan gasket on it and a rear main seal just for insurance purposes. It was a cork gasket on there, so I did the one-piece rubber. The pilot bearing, one of the needle bearings was actually missing in there. Not sure if that was from removal or maybe abuse. So needless to say, I swapped out, put a new pilot bearing in, and that pretty much covers it. So, you know, I was in for a couple seals, couple gaskets, some paint, cleanup, my time, you know, which is probably the biggest thing when it comes to this project in general. So got that all done, and then I went to vac down the cooling system to be able to get coolant inside of the motor and the rad and everything else, and I couldn't vac it down. So I'm like just staring. I'm like, everything is tight. I don't understand why it's not backing down. And I get looking, and the water pump really, like, you could see some sort of a seal there, but it didn't have, like, normally you can see the gasket sticking out around the edge of the water pump. So I just said, screw it. I started throwing some coolant in. I'm like, if it's gonna leak, it's gonna leak. It's gonna show me where the leak is. And it just started pouring down the bottom side of the water pump, bottom side of the timing cover. And so I took the water pump off, and you know what? There was no gasket on the front or back side of the plate of the water pump, like nothing. So I messaged the guy I got the motor from. I'm like, dude, you said this was in a running and driving car. There is no way, absolutely no way, there's no gasket. He's like, no, bro, that motor was running, strong motor. There's no way it didn't have it. I sent him the pictures. He didn't respond. And I was like, whatever, man. So needless to say, I put some water pump gaskets in, the cooling system back down, got it filled with coolant. The injectors that came with the motor as well, I tested those out prior, and 6 out of 8 were bad. So I asked him, how long has this motor really been sitting? And he's like, no, man, like 3 months. And at that point, you know, I'm a little nervous. I'm a little skeptical. I had another set of injectors. I jammed them all in. The car got running, and that's where you guys kind of saw things. You know, does it start up? Yes. Does it sound good? Absolutely. Oil pressure on the stock gauge seems to be really good, so no issues there. But it's time to go for a drive so I can show you guys what's going on here. So before we do the drive, few things to go over with you guys first. Thought maybe the PCV was clogged. That got changed, and yeah, definitely no difference. Some people might be saying, oh, maybe it's valve seals. Well, valve seals tend to smoke at startup. It should puff, and when you decelerate, or when you let off the throttle, you would see a good amount of smoke then. This guy is smoking really bad into the RPMs when you're on the throttle, which to me is leaning towards the rings are bad. So we're going to be doing a compression test after the drive just to kind of validate some things. If we need to get into a leak down test, then we will get into that. But the important thing here is that this motor is, well, it's not toast, it runs, but in terms of being a motor that you want for reliability or drivability, this is literally fill the oil and check the gas is how bad it is. It's probably one of the worst running 5-liter motors that I've actually encountered in all my times of dealing with Fox bodies. Like, I've seen stuff that burns oil or puffs, but you guys are going to see it firsthand. Yeah, so anyways, let's get this thing started up, and we'll go for a little drive. I kid you not, it actually smells like oil inside the car, just from, because that's how much it's puffing. See, the car sounds great. Now it's not puffing at idle. So everything's good, idle's good. Like I said, it runs good too, so let's go for that drive. All right, so we're just kind of, you know, cruising normally here. And, you know, you wouldn't really suspect too much. It's warmed up, you'll be able to see the smoke. So you can see that puffing. There's literally a cloud of smoke coming out of this thing. So that's just after, you know, 2 little casual driving pulls in your 5-liter. Completely unacceptable, right? It's just unreal. So we made it back in one piece, and like I said, the car runs, drives really, really nice. You know, we still got the luxuries of streaming Bluetooth, we got air conditioning, power windows, remote entry, all those lovely things. We just have a motor that smokes horribly. So you guys would have seen a little bit of that smoke puffing when I had the GoPro mounted on the trunk there. But needless to say, it is time to go ahead and get that compression test done. I'm going to let things cool down just a little bit, since we were definitely up to operating temperature, which if we have to get into a leak down test is a good thing too. You do want your motor to be warm when you are conducting that test. But honestly, I'm thinking the compression test is going to tell and reveal all here in this case. I am really, really, really hoping that the individual who sold me this motor is going to come good for it, because I made him aware of all of these things. He said, absolutely no way is that the case. And he offered me a couple $100 for my time with the water pump gasket issue. You know, I told him, I'm like, I'm going to be making a video about it, man, because this is part of the journey. I don't want to leave you guys in the dark. You know, you guys should know what I know when it comes to this, because that's how you trust people. So gonna go ahead, do this. Maybe you'll see the video. Well, we'll see what the results are. Regardless, we know this thing is puffing smoke beyond belief. Best thing now is that if this individual did have another long block that was in really good shape, it'd actually be easier just to swap the motors out than going ahead and messing with this one, because like I said, it's been apart, it's been rebuilt. Who knows if it's, you know, still 302, maybe it's bored out to 306. maybe it's something else. But you know, you got to tear everything down before you know exactly what it is. And I want to get the owner of the car back on the road. So anyways, let's get underneath the hood here, get this compression test done, and see what we come up with. So we got all the plugs out, and you know, looking at your plugs can give you a little bit of insight into what's going on as well. If you see this guy, this is cylinder number 8, and it is pretty much coated in oil versus something like this, which is dry and looks all right. And big difference here. So the worst cylinder in comparison from a spark plug inspection point of view is definitely number 8. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when you run the compression test. Number 4 seems to have a little bit of oil on it too. So that'd be the 2 rear cylinders in this case. So all the spark plugs are out, which means it'll be easy for the motor to turn over when we're doing our compression test. Now it's time to go ahead and you know, use the compression testing tool here, which this is going to read pounds per square inch, and we're going to hope that typically, which I'm not hopeful of anything in this case, but normally you know, you don't want to see much more than a 10% variance across all of your cylinders. So if you're at 120 psi on average, you wouldn't want to see a cylinder less than about 108. So here's compression on cylinder number 1, about 165 psi. And so we're going to go ahead and write that one down. One other thing, guys, when you're doing these compression tests, disconnect your fuel pump relay or hit the inertia switch in your trunk, because you don't want to be dumping a whole bunch of fuel into your cylinders while you're cranking it over. So forgot to mention that earlier. So there you go on that. So we'll go ahead, move on to cylinder number 2. All right, we're right at 170. Pretty much at 170, maybe 171. Okay, so this guy, we're at about 185, which is our highest one yet. Squirt some oil down in there. Oh, this is cylinder number 1, which was the lowest at 165. Well, we got it up to 175 by putting a little bit of oil in the cylinder, so extra 10 psi. All right, guys, so here's the results. First run down the passenger side bank. So 165, 170, 170, 185. Then I added a teaspoon of oil into each one of these cylinders. Increase of 10, increase of 12, increase of 10, increase of 5. I haven't done the driver's side of the motor, and I am not going to, just because the difference between number 4 and number 1 is greater than 10% loss of compression. And the fact that we're gaining so much additional compression on these lower cylinders with oil being added. This is telling us that our rings are worn, or maybe they're broken, or something else. So we could go ahead and do a leak down test if we really wanted to get specific, see about intake versus exhaust versus rings specifically. But this is enough data for me to say this motor's coming out. So there we have it, guys. That concludes my long-winded story about Project Tax Return. And the proof is in the numbers right there, as you can see. And like I said, I'm not going to disclose who I got this motor from yet. I'm going to give them one last chance to come clean on it, and we'll see what happens. The reality is, if I ever sold a motor that I was that confident about, and something like this happened, I'd be giving the money back, supplying another motor. And it's not just about the cost of the motor, it's the time and the labor that went in, like those seals, the cleaning, the paintwork, everything else. Assume nothing. Probably should have done a compression test first, but you're promised everything is good. You have nothing to worry about. It's going to be okay. So that is the story of tax return. And now I need to get pulling this out. You want to pull the motor out?
Yeah, I gotta sell these nice aftermarket wheels here first.
And these nice aftermarket wheels. He says he's going to get $1,200 for these. These uni bolt. These are like tuner. These are probably front wheel drive offsets too. So these were on a S197. You might have seen it in the background with the Cervini kit. So he finally upgraded the wheels. He thinks these are worth big money. Hustling online.
I know they're not worth big money, but hey.
Thanks again for following along. Stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of content coming up. Now that I'm back here in Canada, the focus is I got to get this done. Lemon Dropped is going to be back in the scene. Got a few cleanup items to do on my white Dutch coupe. And we might even have a buyer for the Dutch coupe that's sitting up on the four posts in the back there. So I'll let you guys know how that goes, because I'd really like to see that car get built and go to a good home, which the individual that I've been chatting with would be the perfect candidate for that car. And you can see I got a nice little teaser treat here as well for my white coupe. Nice set of Recaros that I just picked up. They got dropped off today. So I'm going to get those in my white coupe. And yeah, I got a little Foxbody show coming up this weekend. So excited for that. It's going to be the first car show I've been to since I've been back in the country. Well, back in North America as a whole. So that should be exciting. Anyways, guys, rambling on long enough. We'll see you next time.